So we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the event of the Decade of Youth Action. Before I move ahead with the program, I would like to wish you all the Happy Friendship Day. This is a very unique day. We are celebrating a Friendship Day with the event of Decade of Youth Action. And today our topic is the future the youth want, interdependence, cooperation, and friendship. The United Nations is marking its 75th anniversary this year. At a time of great challenge for the world, COVID-19 continues to upend the lives of billions of people, destroying lives and livelihoods and destabilizing the global economy. As the UN continues its efforts to fight the pandemic, it has launched the UN 75, a global consultation that gives the public a chance to shape our collective future. As we celebrate the International Friendship Day, the Friendship Ambassador Foundation, in collaboration with One Share World and the Office of the UN 75, presents a virtual live event today that you are here to discuss the challenges, opportunities, and the future of the world in the next 25 years, while recognizing the principle of our shared humanity and the importance of friendship and human solidarity to address world's most challenging problems. The crisis we are facing serves as an impetus for all of us to come together, accelerate the progress of the 2030 agenda and beyond. To move ahead with the conversation, I'm your host and the moderator for the day. My name is Ali Mustafa, and I work with the Friendship Ambassador Foundation as the youth programming and communication consultant. Besides that, I'm the youth representative to the United Nations Department of Global Communications and part of the Youth Representative Steering Committee of the United Nations. With me joining right now, a person who does not need any introduction, and it is my honor to introduce him though. His name is Jamie Meltz, founder and executive director of One Share World. Jamie is a technology and healthcare futurist, geopolitical expert, novelist, entrepreneur, media commentator, senior fellow of the Atlantic Council, Singularity University faculty member, and the founder and chair of the One Share World. In 2019, he was appointed to the World Health Organization's Expert Advisory Committee on Human Genome Editing. Jamie previously served in the U.S. National Security Council, State Department, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and a human rights officer for the United Nations in Cambodia. He serves on the Advisory Council to Walmart's Future of Retail Policy Lab and has been an election monitor in Afghanistan and Philippines and advised the government of North Korea on the establishment of the Special Economic Zone. Jamie, you have the floor now.
Thank you so much, Ali, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's just an incredible honor to be in this program. Couldn't be more proud of our amazing team at One Shared World and the incredible team at Friendship Ambassadors and this broader community of people who are coming together because we all believe that we have a special responsibility to make the world just a better place for everybody. And what more of a fitting time and a fitting day than to come together on International Friendship Day, because if there is anything that our world needs more of, it's international friendship. I know that everybody is watching this from home. And this is a very, very tough time. As Ali mentioned, we're in the middle of the worst pandemic in a century, and there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of isolation. But there's also a lot of hope because at moments like this, the world can be reborn. And I know this personally through my own family experience and my life experience. I mean, my father and grandparents came to the United States in 1948 after the war as refugees from Nazism. And we all see what happens when worlds are destroyed. And yet the organization that we are celebrating, the United Nations, emerged out of the ashes of that terrible destruction And it is an incredible organization that has done so much to make our world safer and better. And that's why when we come together at moments like this, we need to recognize how much we've built and how many people have come together to build the world that we have with all of its peace and prosperity, and in spite of all of the problems, security, because we are all stakeholders in that world and we're all beneficiaries of that world. And that's why we need to do everything we can to support institutions like the United Nations, like the concepts of international law and human rights, why we need to make sure that we're standing up for the world's most vulnerable populations. But that's not enough, because part of being an advocate is being honest about strengths and weaknesses. And the successes that we have had in this world are really incredible. This is the moment of the greatest, in spite of all the problems, peace, prosperity, basic health in the history of humanity. But we also need to look squarely at the failures that are right in front of us. This pandemic, COVID-19, was an entirely preventable pandemic. It could have been prevented had the Chinese government had a more open society and responded more quickly and aggressively on this. And some of you may have seen my recent editorial in the Wall Street Journal on this. It could have been prevented if we, the international community, had helped build the kind of World Health Organization that had a mandate to have a global surveillance capability, that had a global investigations capacity where they could send inspectors anywhere in the world on a moment's notice and not be blocked by any one state, as was the case with China here. And when we look at problems like that, we recognize that not only did we fail to prevent this pandemic, we haven't built the capacity to prevent pandemics. And it's for the same reason that we haven't been able to build a global infrastructure to address climate change, to address ecosystem destruction, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, systemic poverty and inequality, and so many other things. And so while we celebrate the United Nations, we need to recognize that we have all failed in deep and fundamental ways. And the only way we're going to fix our world is by looking at the successes, but also looking at those failures. And the foundation of those failures is the fundamental mismatch that we have between global problems and predominantly national solutions. And that's why the United Nations, as great as it is, remains created, funded, and significantly controlled by states. And states are great. And the United Nations is great. But this story is not complete. And unless we fix what's broken, this house is going to collapse. The foundational idea of one shared world is that we can't be calling for a better world. We can't just be having rock concerts singing about a better world. That's not how it's going to happen. We need to build an inclusive global constituency, a third pillar of global power that is calling for our greatest global challenges to be addressed in the name of our common humanity. This isn't about charity. It's about building a powerful and relevant constituency for change. And we certainly encourage everyone, if you haven't already done so, to go to the oneshared.world website, read the Declaration of Interdependence, which is now translated into 18 languages, and sign the Pledge of Interdependence to join our movement to build this global constituency for change. It's absolutely essential. But change requires community. This isn't an abstract principle. This is about human beings coming together, knowing each other, developing friendships. If we all lived in a little village, we would recognize that our security and well-being and even happiness resides in everybody else. Our species has gone global so quickly as a result of these very powerful technologies, but our consciousness hasn't yet caught up. So we need to develop not just a global consciousness, not just global friendship, but a global constituency of people who are coming together, a new source of power, representing our common humanity. That's why what we're doing here today is so absolutely essential. That's why we're coming here to celebrate International Friendship Day. That's why our organizations and others like them around the world are so important, but that we have to come together around a common mission, because our world, and we're all seeing it today, is in many ways broken, and it's up to all of us to fix it. So thank you very much. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have. And now back to everyone else.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for giving your opening remarks. Indeed, that was very insightful, and of course, you were absolutely right when it's about saving the world, and everyone has to come together. The organizations, the states, and of course, young people who make the major population of the world right now. Speaking of youth and the young people, we are starting our first panel. That is on the One Share World. And we're gonna talk more about the interdependence, cooperation, and friendship with the young people, with the dynamic youth who is from the One Share World present with us. And I would like to welcome all of the young panelists who are there. And I would like to request to all of them to please turn on your cameras as you guys are live. And we're gonna start our conversation. So we have with us Umar, Shagun, and Grace from the One Share World. And I would like to give the floor to Grace to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today. A quick few words about myself. I will be a third-year student at UPenn in Philadelphia in the fall. I'm very excited to be going back in the fall despite the change in academic schedules everywhere. I'm studying mathematical economics and minoring in Hispanic studies. Throughout my life, I've also been interested in international relations and the nonprofit world. So One Shared World really provides a perfect place for that. I've been working with One Shared World for just about 4 months. I've been working very closely with Omar and Shagun, and I've loved every minute of it. So thank you, Ali.
Ali, you're on mute.
Thank you, Grace. Umar, please introduce yourself.
Pleasure. Hi, everybody. My name is Omar Sana. I'm a graduate in finance and currently the founder of Invenium Consulting. I'm part of the co-leadership team here at One Shared World. As Grace mentioned, I work closely with her and Shagun. My involvement with nonprofits goes back quite a while. I've been involved with something called SWAT, which is the Social Welfare Academics and Training Trust, which is focused on impoverished youth in Pakistan. I've also been part of something called the Global Sustainability Network, which is focused on Goal 8 of the UN SDGs. One Shared World is an incredibly exciting platform. It offers me an avenue to make, I think, a meaningful impact in issues that me and lots of other people that I know genuinely care about. So very excited to be here, and our sincere thanks to our great partnership at the Friendship Ambassador Foundation.
Thank you, Umar. Shagun, the floor is yours to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ali. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here today. My name is Shagun Sethi. I very recently completed my master's in global affairs from Columbia University. I have a background in political science, and I have been doing social development and social work for my whole life. I am based out of New Delhi, India, and I have worked for education, for healthcare, for gender equality is actually where my whole heart is. And I started my own nonprofit in India back in 2016. One Shared World is one of those movements that gets me excited. And it's actually one of the things that has kept me going despite this pandemic, because it's really a way to raise my voice and involve myself in something that's bigger than myself and the four walls that I'm, stuck within in this COVID-19 time. And I am very, very excited to work with Grace and Omar every single day. And I'm super excited to be here with Friendship Ambassadors today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shagun. So we have indeed a very diverse and dynamic panel here with us, all the fantastic young people with diverse background doing a lot of work in the development and of course associated with a dynamic organization, One Share World. So I'm gonna ask the first question from Grace about the organization. So this session is going to be about, we're gonna know more about One Share World before we move towards our another panel that is on the UN75 dialogue. So moving forward with this session, and want to know more, as I'm sure our audience and other people, other young people joining us online, they want to know more about your work. So Grace, my question from you is, can you introduce how One Share World involves the youth in their everyday work?
Thanks, Ali. Of course. So as you all heard from Jamie, One Shared World is a new global social movement that is recognizing the importance of our mutual interdependence. But now I really want to highlight one of the most unique components of the organization, and that is its coordinator program. One Shared World allows young people to play a very active role in the organization. In fact, right before their launch just a few months ago, the organization started this program. What other organizations may call our interns, One Shared World gives this group the fitting title of coordinators. As the name suggests, this group of young people is at the forefront of coordinating the organization's most important work. This team honestly started out as administrative leads, young people who would know how to work the technology that we use as we're living in this virtual world. But just in a few weeks, our role has grown into taking on more of these action items and truly guiding the organization. Coordinators have a role in anything and everything, from bringing in new volunteers to developing toolkits to writing reports on some of the world's most pressing issues. And they've honestly become truly the heart and soul of the organization. I quickly want to address 3 key points that really make this coordinator program unique. The first of which is that this is a very self-structured internship. Every coordinator plays an active role in the organization and can decide how they want to contribute. They can apply their strengths and join groups that coincide with their interests. Just to give you an example of what that looks like, for me personally, I've participated in Model UN for just about 5 years now. Yes, I'm one of those crazy Model UN kids. Through debating, I have thought about the validity of the UN, other international institutions, and their published works. But because of my interest in this field, I had the opportunity to join the campaigns group at One Shared World that's addressing one of the world's most pressing issues, and in some cases is striving to pressure these international institutions to commit to new action. I've been able to contribute my own thoughts and opinions about One Shared World's purpose using the lens of my own experiences, and I think all coordinators would agree with me that they do the same. The second element that I want to highlight is that the coordinator program gives coordinators the opportunity to meet other university students, young professionals, and experienced leaders. I've honestly met some great friends through this program. It's great to chat with students from around the world who are attending university or recently graduated. And it's truly amazing the tidbits of life advice you get during these meetings, just passing by, chatting with each other. But also coordinators get a chance to meet a wonderful team of experienced leaders and professionals. Because coordinators work so closely with their groups, they get to work with leaders who have been in their field for years. One Shared World has a great network of nonprofit leaders, university presidents, people who've worked in the White House, UN ambassadors. You may say we have our own personal list of celebrities that coordinators get to meet on the daily. Lastly, I just want to tell you how this is truly a youth-led program. Omar Shagun and I have the great privilege and honor of leading this group of coordinators and learning from them every single day. That high energy and activist mentality that we have seen in the rest of the world right now is truly present in One Shared World. It's an amazing experience to be surrounded by these young people who are eager to contribute and excited to actively work towards creating a better world. So it's been a great experience for me to be a part of this youth program and get to meet so many amazing young people. So thank you so much, Ali, for your question.
Thank you, Grace. Indeed, that was an insightful information. And I'm going to ask further question later when the conversation goes forward. What you said is indeed an insightful information. And I hope young people out there who are listening to our conversation will be interested in joining you. And I'm sure they must have some questions from you as well. So my next question is from Shagun. Shagun, How can youth engage with others during the current crisis, and why does One Shared World provide that opportunity?
Thanks for your question, Ali. So like I said, I worked with nonprofits and in social development my whole life. And what that also means is that I worked with young people my whole life. And I worked with people from all walks of life who come with all different experiences. And the one thing I hear from a lot of people right now is this question, which is, what does it mean to grow up now in this time, with this context, with all of these different things happening? What does that mean? And how does that contribute to your story? And COVID-19 has kind of, to put shortly, ruined our lives, right? For young people, we're losing jobs, we are losing internships, we have no hope. Some people are able to go back to school, some people are not able to go back to school. People are not able to meet their friends. We're just stuck at home and we just don't know what to do with ourselves. And for a people that is so energetic and has so much to give to the world, we feel like we're caged and we feel like we're not able to do and meet our potential. But at the same time, there's another side to this coin. And I feel like COVID-19 has also shown us the uniqueness of this moment. Because during COVID-19, what we've all seen is that the world has come to a standstill. We've all hit pause and we're all trying to think about ourselves. We're reflecting. There's a lot of attention given to self-care. There's a lot of attention given to planning out what our goals want to be. And a lot of people are really thinking about what they want to contribute to the world. And so one thing that's become clear to the youth is that this world is really broken. And during this time of us sitting at home, we're really thinking about how is it that we can go ahead and fix this world? And so there are a lot of questions in our heads about whether I am the one who needs to fix this world. What are the resources I have? Whether I can contribute? How big is my voice? If at all there is a voice in this world. But the one thing that is important to note is that the starting point of this entire conversation is hope and it's opportunity. Because we only ask questions when we really think that there's potential to really do something. And I really believe that when we ask ourselves that what does it mean to grow up now, we also need to think about what is it that we are doing to shape this now? Because there are so many uncontrollable things happening around us, which are not caused by us. Generations have left this to us, but there's so many other things that we are contributing to. And so I, moved to asking myself, what am I doing right now? And what is the story I'm going to tell when I come out of this pandemic? And so to young people around the world, I just want to say that if you're looking to fix something, trust me, there's going to be things broken all around you. And there's going to be people needing help every corner that you look in. And there's going to be people who need you to raise your voice because there are vulnerable people who can't raise their voice right now. And so COVID-19 is really a time where you can use social media to raise your voice, to create echo chambers, to create spaces where people can really think about and analyze the problems that exist in the world today. But it also creates this time and this space where we can really think about how we can volunteer. And this time and this space has given us a unique opportunity to reimagine volunteering. It's no longer going to a neighborhood school and teaching English and math. It's now about how can we innovate curriculum? How can we create solutions? How can we teach that kid who has no internet? How can we reach out to women across the world who don't have access to spaces? How do we tackle domestic violence when people are going to be in the domestic? And so it's really a time for young people to step up and use everything that they've been given, use their tools and create these new solutions. I know people who are coming up with curriculums. I know people who are doing a massive amount of research. There are people providing entertainment options to people who have no Netflix and chill, that they don't get to do that. And so all of those different things and avenues have started opening up. But then there comes One Shared World. And that's where I see the kind of light at the end of this tunnel that we're all kind of stuck in. I was very honored to meet Omar and Grace and work with One Shared World starting in April, which is now, I think, been 4 months. And honestly, this pandemic hasn't felt as bad when I have these calls with this entire team every day. And I will just echo some of what Grace spoke about, because One Shared World is that one organization that's providing that avenue to support and raise voices for people in a very innovative way, because you're not expected to go out. You're not expected to spend money, because we know that we don't have that. We know that a lot of young people don't have access to those things. The only thing we ask of you is to come, be present, and use your voice. That's it. And that's the uniqueness of this. We're not asking you to bring anything but yourself to the table. But the other thing that I think is especially unique about how the youth is contributing to this conversation is that I think that a lot of times when organizations say that we have a very big youth element and that young people are really our voice, we feel that young people are the ones leading it. But I've noticed that a lot of times young people are there to go ahead and take forward action plans that are already drafted. At One Shared World, young people are very much a part of the table, and they're the ones drafting those plans. In fact, most of the times, we're the only ones on the table. And we're the only ones taking decisions and telling our senior leadership that you need to go ahead and implement this. And that's fascinating, because what that also means is that our voice is more than just a young voice. Our voice is an equal voice. And that's what makes this opportunity, this program, super, super, super special. It's beyond flat because it's more than equitable. And I'm super, super happy to be here. And I just want as many people to join. Please go to our website, sign the pledge, and fill up the form. And we will see you soon. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, Shagun. Indeed, it was a very impactful conversation and words coming out from you. We can see your body language and your passion, that the way you're speaking and everything. That's the youth voice that's coming from inside, from the heart. I'm sure when it's affecting me, so I'm sure it's affecting other people also who are listening. So those were some really wonderful words when you speak about speaking up. We're gonna speak about more about this later. So my next question is from Omar Sana. We have heard the youth impact and other things of the One Shared World from your other colleagues. So from you, I want to know, how is One Shared World going about trying to make an impact in the world?
Great. Thank you very much for the question, Ali. I'd say there's a couple of different ways that we go about it. One thing that's certainly essential to what we do at One Shared World is what we refer to internally as building the case. The organization goes through a systematic sort of assessment of existential threats, and we seek to identify how the most common hurdle there is a lack of a cohesive global system to address those threats. It was touched on by both Shagun and Grace that we've launched a series of campaigns, and they're designed to identify those hurdles by diving further into the issue. So we have, a vulnerable populations campaign, which is focused on impoverishment. We have a global public health campaign, which is focused on access to medical care. We have a campaign which is focused on clean water, sanitation, and pandemic protection. Those are just a few examples, and obviously there'll be more along the way. But the point is that these campaigns are designed to identify and articulate how interdependence plays a much larger role in the solutions to these problems than we might realize. And the dealing with them on a supranational basis could create a more effective global risk mitigation system than we currently have. They highlight, for example, how a more robust global pandemic response system, and we're referring to a more empowered WHO in this case, how that would have resulted in a very different scenario for the current challenges that we're facing with COVID. And that's something that I'm sure we'll dive into more on panel 2. But we touch on that with other topics as well. So the thought here is that we progressively, issue by issue, build the case for interdependence. And we hope then to take these issues to forums that were built on this concept of interdependence, places like the UN, places like the G20, and so on. It's not all academic in nature. Obviously, we understand that that's a very important part of what we do, but we also, as much as we think with our heads, we also try and think with our hearts. We have an arts and culture program, which is sort of reaching through to people on an emotional level. And we think there's a lot of emotional resonance in this concept of interdependence. So all of that is from that sort of the organizational perspective, but then I'd just like to quickly add that there is, of course, the personal perspective to all of this as well. We have, as Shagun was very impassionately and sort of emphatically highlighting, we have this group of young people who are eager to make a difference, and that brings us back to the youth discussion. I think there's absolutely been a shift in how the younger generation sees the world, as well as how they see their place in the world. So some of the issues we've been discussing here are, several generations old now. Climate change, might only be 2 or 3 generations old, but something like poverty goes as far back as we can imagine. And I think in my view, there's 2 key differences with the current generation. The first is urgency. We know that we have a limited amount of time to tackle some of these issues, in some cases a decade or less, thus the inclination towards a decade of youth action. And the second is information and access to it. No other generation has ever been this well informed and had this much access to information. We have the ability to see and hear the realities of the struggles of the issues that we're talking about. And I think that heightened awareness triggers a moral impulse for heightened action as well. We see that these issues are harmful. We see in many cases that they're solvable. And that's why you have youth coming to the fore. That's why you might have a Scandinavian teenager who becomes the face of climate change. You might have brave young students speaking out in the wake of, speaking on the topic of arms control in the wake of a shooting. You'll have people joining organizations like FAF or signing the Pledge of Interdependence at OSW because that's a platform that resonates to them. Joining these organizations, from this youth perspective, it's meant to be a statement. It's meant to be a place and a mechanism for people all over the world to demand more from their governments in the way of meaningful action for problems that we could mitigate much more effectively if only we tackled them through this lens of interdependence as opposed to through the lens of national interest. So, we think that's a very powerful message, and if it's one that resonates with people listening here today, we strongly advocate that you join, because there are real campaigns taking place. There's a real opportunity to make a difference. And this youth inclination, as I've highlighted, I think is very important to that. And One Shared World and Friendship Ambassadors both have a unique platform to sort of empower that youth. And it's an empowering notion.
Thank you, Umar, to give us very comprehensive brief upon how you're making an impact. So I'm going to ask you questions that while I was listening to the conversation on the answers that you were giving, there were a few questions in my mind that appeared. So my question is from Shogun. Shogun, what do you think that when you speak about, when you say that young people should speak up, not just young people, I believe everyone should speak up and talk about it. And whatever issues they're having, and you even talk about the domestic violence, and there's no way you can avoid domestic violence when you are staying domestic, and we're seeing a lot of domestic violence also taking place, especially against a woman in all around the world. I don't want to single out any region. We are hearing stories and everything, but when you say speak up, raise your voice, and the only platform we have is social media right now. And how do you suggest any specific steps, any specific thing that any advice you want to give to young people, how they can use social media to, raise any issue and, make it viral?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Ali. So I think it's systematic. I think there are a lot of things that young people can do more than being on social media. I think social media is a platform to express your voice, but it's not the only platform. I think one of the things that young people really can do right now is read up. So when we think about issues that are happening across the world, when we think about violence against women, for example, it's very important to know what exactly that violence is and how it is not generic, how it is very, very subjective to the context that you're coming from. And only once we're educated can we make arguments. Because a lot of times I personally have been told that, oh, you're only 20 years old. What would you know? Except I do know, because I read your constitution. I read the books on gender. I read Simone de Beauvoir, and I read all of these contexts. So when I come to the table, I do know. And I'm not just a 20-year-old. I'm an educated 20-year-old who took that time to use the resources available online and give myself a perspective and give myself an opinion. And that's where we start. The second thing that we can do, I think, is very important, is hold people accountable. I think our public offices are elected by us and for us. And wherever you are in the world, if you are able, I understand that this is not a privilege everyone has, but it is a privilege that some of us have. And so we should take this opportunity to write to them, because they're there to listen to us. And if we're not the ones raising our voice and going out and voting and going out and expressing our interest in politics and making politics personal, there's no way in which change can ever come about. But I think the third and most important thing is that when we go out and we spread the message and we talk on social media and we go ahead and educate people around us, that's where real change begins. And the key word here is begins. It doesn't end with me posting a story. I think what sometimes happens a lot is that we get caught in armchair activism, where we see people just going on Facebook, liking a post and thinking that's it, that's done. There are very small steps that all of us can take every day. It's about switching to brands that commit to gender equality, switching to brands that do not leave a carbon impact and footprint in the world. It's about, supporting your local businesses. It's about helping people around you. And those are small switches that we all can make without having to go to great lengths. And this doesn't even involve the, ambit of volunteer work. And that's a whole different conversation about how you can, join so many nonprofits right now, which are trying to tutor kids in countries which are doing online education. And so that's a separate domain. But these are three things that we can all do sitting at home, sitting on our couch in between our Netflix movies, and be better citizens and be a better youth. So that's where I think we should all start the conversation.
Thank you, Shagun, for shaking up a reality. I think you caught a lot of people from the collar right now by saying that. And you have shake them like that and, wake up. You have to do this. Watching Netflix and liking a Facebook post is not everything. I totally agree with you. Indeed, that's a wonderful answer. I love that. And I hope our viewers are also loving that. So Grace, as you have a good experience with the Model United Nations, and you have been doing a lot of advocacy work also with the young people. Grace, what is your, I want to know, as I'm also a youth representative to the United Nations, so the question from you is very important from the perspective of United Nations. What is your advice to the United Nations that how United Nations can take more concrete steps to ensure the inclusion of youth voices within the system and within their system, either their political system or the civil society system? How do you think the UN can do that?
Well, I think one of the first steps is having youth come together to share their voice and share their opinions and thoughts. I think platforms like this are a great start to that, to allow youth to share what they're truly thinking. I think because sometimes we're so young, like Shagun was saying, it's assumed that maybe we're not educated, don't know what the UN truly does. But I can speak for many people that I know that they think the UN is fascinating and have lots of thoughts about how it could be better. And I think it's important to provide a platform for youth to come together and share those thoughts and take that collective action to the UN. Programs like this allow people to share their opinions and ideas and be able to get that to the UN quickly. I would also encourage UN leaders to really think about the youth on a global scale. I think sometimes subsets of youth can be thought about regionally, but we often miss the global youth component and how youth have this activist, young, huge energy that can be mobilized to help the world's most vulnerable people, but also to help materialize the change that they would like to see in the UN. I would encourage young people to be in great contact with their ambassador and other UN organizations and find ways that they can help the UN. I think it's about all of us doing our part and coming together to really drive that collective action and use our energy for great work. So thank you, Ali. You're on mute, Ali.
I'm sorry about that. So we have people from all over the world watching. We have the staff of the UN 75 watching, and I myself will ensure that we will pay some attention to the advice that you are giving. And thank you so much for your very honest advices. Omar, so my last question from this panel is from you. So as you know that we are going through the pandemic of a lifetime. We haven't seen anything like that in our life, at least our generation. And we never expected it, that it gonna hit us like that. Jobs are gone, economy shut down, and I'm not sure for how much long time it gonna take to recover. So I want to know from you, like, what role young people can play in rebuilding this world. What should be the role of youth in rebuilding the world? Can you be very specific on that?
Sure. I'm happy to try my best there, Ali. Although if I had the solution to COVID, I would have readily shared that much earlier on. I think the way that the youth can contribute to an issue like this. Obviously this is a massive existential threat, and the smartest people in the world, global leading scientists and world leaders, have had a lot of trouble in figuring out how to address this issue. So it's a valid question to ask. What can a coalition of a youth organized group of people do? And I think a lot of what people are spending time thinking about these days are structures, and that conversation is taking place from a variety of different lenses. I think we as youth have an obligation to advocate for structures which are more capable of addressing these issues. We aren't at the cutting edge of technology. We're obviously, but definitionally speaking, we're slightly far removed from the pinnacles of our careers. And hopefully in 15, 20 years, we'll have people who are able to contribute, to the sciences and to governance in ways that can make a difference. But until we're in those positions, until the people who are, hopefully currently listening to this webinar, or people who are involved in organizations like FAF or OSW find themselves in those positions, we have an obligation and we have an ability to demand more from the leadership that's currently in place in terms of these structures. So in addressing something like a global pandemic, all we can do is, and this touches on the point that Shagun was referring to, all we can do is be well informed, look towards the science, and look towards sound analysis and logic of what could have been better done. What can we put in place to avoid these types of things in the future? We have moments of plasticity, we have moments of opportunity in history, and very seldom do we take full advantage of those. And you can see what it looks like when we do. In the wake of World War II, we had the clarity of post-war thinkers who came together and understood that we came to that very precarious point in world history because we were looking at things from an overly nationalistic perspective. And whether or not, whatever you think of the current global political landscape, there's an argument to be made that national interests are in many cases superseding international interests. So I think we as youth have an obligation to demand that the structures in place account for this global voice, this collective humanity. And that's what One Shared World tries to do. We try and provide a platform. You'd asked earlier on, what can we do as far as the UN is concerned? And I'd say the loftiest version, the highest ambition there is for the youth to actually have a seat at the UN, and for us to advocate that these structures do what they're intended to, which is cooperate better, inform better, share information better, and respond better. The infrastructures exist, the capabilities are there. It's a matter of will, and it's a matter of demanding more from leaders currently in their positions who have the ability to do more. We have networks in place, we have infrastructure in place, and we can demand more from our leadership, I'd say, is the best thing that youth could do.
Thank you so much, Omar. As we are wrapping up this panel, I want to thank Shagun, I want to thank Grace, I want to thank Omar, and I want to thank Jamie for attending this panel and answering the questions. And thank you so much for giving these amazing answers and the advices from all of the young people here, Shagun, Grace, and Omar. Thank you so much for your advices and your answers that you have given. And I'm sure that young people, they're listening and they will follow it. And thank you so much. As we're gonna start our panel, I would like to say goodbye to you and thank you so much. Follow our conversation that is going on Facebook. So thank you so much, everyone. And you can now leave so the next panelist can join in.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Ali.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So as we gonna start our second panel, I'm sure you guys have learned a lot from the first panel that was speaking on the organization, and we heard a lot on the youth advices, how the UN can integrate the youth voice into the system. We hear how we can use the our own voice to shape up the world, and of course what we have to do to reshape the economy and reopen the world. So now we're gonna start our second panel, that is the UN 75 dialogue, the youth dialogue. that we're gonna do. So in this, we're gonna ask the questions that are based on the UN 75, the future of the world, how we see the future of this world. So we got the exciting panel, young people joining us from all around the world, such a diverse panel. So as we move forward with that, I want you all to stay tuned as we're gonna continue our conversation. And we got over here Malaika with us, we got Diana with us, we got Catherine with us, we got Dana with us, we got Daniel with us. So before we start the conversation and before I start asking you the questions on that, so we're gonna go with the introduction. First, I would like to invite Malaika to give her introduction. And so Malaika, please go ahead with your introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Malaika Bayana. I'm 18 years old. I will be a freshman at Duke University in just a couple weeks. In high school, I was involved with advocacy for a number of causes, gun control, global health, and more recently, the Black Lives Matter movement. I took a gap year in between high school and college in which I worked as the assistant press secretary for the European Union delegation to the United States. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Malaika. And we're excited to have you as well. Catherine, please go ahead with your introduction.
Hi, my name is Catherine Elias. I'm currently a third-year student at the University of California, Berkeley, and I'm studying political economy, and in the future, hopefully studying demography studies. And my background with interacting with the UN is actually also came from Model UN and continues in university through an international relations professional group. So I'm really excited to hear everyone's thoughts today.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Daniel, please go ahead with your introduction.
My name is Daniel. I'm here in the United States, currently pursuing my master's in public policy and administration here at the Kennedy School, Harvard. And I'm a Ugandan, and I founded an organization that supports rural women in Uganda to access technology, to start up small businesses, and we mentor them on how to manage and drive these businesses to success. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Diana, why don't you go with your introduction, please?
Thank you, Ali. My name is Tiana Herman. I am currently a Master's of Science in Public Health candidate at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm originally from Jamaica. I was born and raised there, and I think that background has really impacted my goals in my career. I'm very much interested in advocacy, public health, and policy work. I went to undergrad at Rhodes College, which is a very tiny college in Memphis, Tennessee, and took a gap year as an AmeriCorps member working on the opioid epidemic in Florida. And that's just a little background on me. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Diana. Dana, please go ahead with your introduction.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Alanzi. I am the Qatar Youth Ambassador to the FAF and have been involved with them since 2018. And excited for the Youth Assembly happening in August. A little bit of my background, I studied culture and politics at Georgetown University, class of 2017. And I am very passionate about the right of access to education, SDG4, and gender equality, as well as my involvement here currently with refugee topics, being based in Geneva with the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR. I look forward to having these discussions with you, and may they be very fruitful.
Thank you so much, Dana. And thank you all for the introduction. So now we're gonna start our in-depth and more detailed conversation. So as we all know that the United Nations is celebrating its 75th anniversary. We all know why United Nations was formed and what were the aims and objectives and what United Nations has been doing. So it's been a very important year for United Nations. And the United Nations wants to know from everyone, especially the young people, about what do you think about the UN, and what do you think that the UN, how UN can change the world, and how the UN can, impact the lives of the people all around the world. So as we all know that the population of young people is 1.8 billion. That is a huge chunk of the world population, and in many of the countries, especially in the global south, in Africa and Middle East and Southeast Asia, we see the major population of the country is on the young people. So as you are a very diverse group from all around the world, I can see all the ethnic people from different ethnic backgrounds over here, different genders over here. So this conversation is going to be very important. And my first question is from Malaika. Malaika, it's on the UN 75 thing. So what do you most want to see in the year 2045 when the UN will turn 100? Consider discussing some of all the mega trends we have identified as the climate, environment, gender, health, technology, poverty, inequality, population changes, security threats, and whatnot. It's going on. So what do you most want to see in the year 2045 when the UN will turn 100?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the most important issues to my generation is climate change. And I think that's one that I would hope that the UN has targeted by 2045, and one that I think we need increased global cooperation to deal with. The climate isn't going to get better just because we hope it will. It's going to require global communication. It's going to require a move away from fossil fuels of every country in the world. And we need to have a united front. And the only people at the moment that can help us deal with that is the United Nations. So I would say that I hope that the climate crisis is improved in 2045. And I hope that we also deal with issues of inequality as we're looking to move our economies away from fossil fuels into the renewable energy sectors, dealing with inequality and understanding that climate change doesn't affect us all uniformly, that it affects the vulnerable populations, that it affects people of color, that it affects different segments of the population more, and learning how to deal with that while we're transitioning our economies, transitioning the world into a hopefully cleaner energy and a healthier place, making sure that we deal with inequality while we're doing that is the future, I hope, for us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Malaika. So the same question from you, Catherine. Same question. What do you think? How you want to see the world in 2045?
Yeah, what I hope to see in 2045 is actually similar to Malaika in many ways, that in an economic sense, I hope to see that global inequality decreases between countries, which could be seen and viewed very tangibly as a drop in the Gini coefficient in countries across the world, and preventing the further widening between high-income countries and low-income countries is also going to be tied to comprehensive and inclusive climate mitigation strategies, because we won't be able to grow sustainably past 2045 without it. And in a social sense, I hope for inequality and inequity to also be addressed based on decreasing and eradicating discrimination based on identity, which can mean, of course, many different things. So discrimination based on gender, race or ethnicity, disability, age, sexual orientation, among many others. And inequity and its resulting inequality will again be one of the most destabilizing forces of our generation, and one of the most important things that we need to address by 2045. And the UN's 2030 agenda aligns and says very similar things to ensure equal opportunity for all populations. And this work certainly won't be completed by 2045. Our generation certainly won't be the only ones tackling this issue, but it's definitely one of the most pressing ones, I think, for people our age.
Thank you, Catherine. Same question from Daniel. Daniel, how do you see the world in 2045? What are the issues that you want to see resolved? What are the issues you see that gonna be there?
Well, I definitely agree with the other panelists, but I want to see a world where we are more attached to our sense of humanity. You can realize that for us young people, we think of the world in a completely different perspective from the generation before behind us. Uh, we are so attached to our sense of humanity, like climate change. This is doesn't discriminate whether you're white or black, and there is no complications on why governments can't come out and have reliable commitments to issues like climate change, ethnicity, but for our generation behind us, they look at the politics and the economics more than the sense of humanity. So my vision is to see a world where we get attached to our sense of humanity. And when you look at the Sustainable Development Goal, they are all directing us to our sense of humanity, being human beings, poverty, discrimination, clean cities, and all these things kind of define us as human beings, not the politics, not the economics. Yes, these things are really good, but our sense of humanity comes first. So I want to see a world where we are reattached to our sense of being human beings and not being manufacturers of things or innovators, which is really cool, but humans and our sense of humanity comes first. And I think the UN is doing a great job to reinforce this. And I hope politicians or economists could really see something beneath their interests and see humans and see that poverty affects humans and see that climate change affects humans. And yeah, for me, that's the world I want to see, being reattached to our sense of being human beings.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Before I will move forward to the another question. So I'm going to include some comments from the Facebook that people are making. First, I want to include the comment of the Diana from Peru. She said that this is an example of young people who are interested about global issues and want to make positive change. Thank you. Thank you so much, Diana, if you're watching us right now. Thank you so much for your comment. And I want to include another comment, and that is from Priya Gatesh. He says that definitely agree with the point that global engagement is pivotal in terms of addressing global issues. But how can we create meaningful impact that might aid with the current world health crisis that many are facing? So we're going to answer that at the end, at the last portion when we're going to ask the question. So we got another question from Yamna Khan. She said that she asked, how can we encourage others to feel the same sense of humanity? We're going to include this question in the second part of this conversation. So Tiana, same question from you. How do you see the world in 2045?
Thank you for that question. So my answer slightly aligns with Daniel. I think that right now we're seeing this transition towards isolationism, towards extreme nationalism, and borders are going up and people are sort of becoming more isolated. We see a lot of leaders in our countries that are moving towards that sort of ideology. And so for me, I would like to see a pushback against that. I do not want that to be our future. I think that this very much aligns with what One Shared World is all about, is the need for interdependence to become the main theme for our relations, our global relations, and sort of transitioning a bit, and this is very different than what some of my colleagues have talked about, but in the year 2045, I personally would like to see some reform in the UN. I would love to see the UN working in the interests of the people rather than regimes, because currently the UN can only be as good as its member states allow. And this is something that we actually touched on in our campaign report for vulnerable populations. And, sadly, far too many governments see the UN as sort of a playing field for political manipulation rather than serving the public interest. And I really think it's time for us to give the UN back to the people that it claims to represent. to represent and not the governments that seek to run it. So, all UN appointments should be non-political. And after all, those working for the UN should no longer really be in hoc with their governments. And so if we move more towards the need for international organizations like the UN cooperation and things like that, then we can ensure that the UN has the power that it needs to really stick to its commitment for the common good of the planet and its inhabitants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gianna. Dana, same question from you. Let's have a Middle Eastern point of view on the world in 2045. Dana.
That's a tough question, Ali, to put the Middle Eastern question on the platform within 3 minutes. But I think to be honest, I want to just echo what all of my fellow speakers have said. I think there is definitely a need for a paradigm shift in how we address humanitarian issues. The way we are working right now, and especially with COVID hitting us hard, is not working anymore. There needs to be reform. There needs to be a pushback. And above all, I think the youth need to start holding those in power accountable to that power. And I think our generation has really been amazing at that on many levels, whether it is climate change, whether it is gender equality, whether it is marching for Black Lives Matter. We have really voiced out our concerns more so than any other generation, I want to say. But beyond that, to go back to the Middle East, Ali, I think I would like to see people like us in power. People like Daniel, who believe in compassion, who believe in humanity, who believe that helping others is more important than helping their political regime. People like Tiana, who believe that there should be a pushback against member states when they demand something that is not in alignment with humanitarian aid and humanitarian service. These are all realities that we live. And the Middle Eastern region is the most contested region in the world currently, whether it is from a refugee perspective, which is what I'm working on right now, or whether it is from a war-torn zone perspective. Unfortunately, political manipulation, lies, and gaslighting issues is still ongoing, and it feels like we are not tackling things head on anymore. Rather, we're just delaying them until our generation has to deal with them once they come. I would like to see a more just world within 25 years' time, and I would like to see more compassionate youth leading at that time. Over. Thank you, Mustafa.
Thank you so much, Dana. So we hear a lot of views, climate change, from climate change to humanitarian issues and the political issues. So I want you all to be carefully listen what I'm about to say right now. So this is another very important question. And I think this is the most important question for me, as you all mentioned the issues: climate change, humanitarian issues, political issues, education, economic inequality. So I'm sure it's not going to be an easy road. It's definitely it's not going to be an easy road to achieve all of that in next 25 years by 2045. So my next question is what do you think that going to be the hurdles in achieving all of this? I'm gonna start with Malaika.
Hard to pick just one hurdle, I'd say. I think these goals are so difficult to achieve. It's not going to be easy. I don't think there's anyone in the world who thinks that we can just achieve this without significant pushback. But I think some of the bigger ones and trends that I've seen emerging recently is widespread misinformation. I mean, it's hard to unify behind a goal if no one agrees what we're fighting for. And it's not just, discussions about what the right way to approach an issue is, it's whether the issue even exists, it's a very significant thing we have to start pushing back against. And additionally, corrupt governments, all over the world, and trends towards nationalism and greed, I think, is just all of these issues are going to continue. And I think what Daniel was saying earlier is so important, finding that sense of shared humanity, because these issues are not just affecting one nation. Any issue that affects any nation eventually affects all of us, whether it's right now or 10 years in the future or something that we didn't even realize was affecting us. But at the end of the day, every issue is an issue to humanity. And so I think that some of the significant hurdles we're facing can only be solved if we look at them from a global perspective instead of trying to, have these nations tackle these issues on their own. And the rise of nationalism and misinformation are huge barriers to achieving change.
Thank you, Malaika. Catherine, the hurdles.
Yes, thank you. So I think one of the things, and I really enjoy how everyone in this panel especially has framed things as paradigm shifts and rethinking how we conceptualize interacting with the UN and the global youth. So one of the things that I was thinking of is that we're going to have a fundamental shift in how we think about limited resources and what we view as somehow limited wealth, limited opportunity in the world, and shift that into a narrative of one that there is in fact abundance, there is enough to provide for all. There is no reason that why the world has to be inherently unequal, and change that to rethink about how can we equally distribute resources, how can we provide equal opportunity, and really just move away from this fear, this existential fear of there not being enough, because I think that is driving a lot of the obstacles to addressing many humanitarian issues, global warming, anything that requires the collective action, that it prevents people from actually joining together when we have this fear that there will be not enough for our own populations or as individuals.
Thank you, Catherine. Daniel, same question from you. Hurdles, issues.
Well, for me, I look at this in an angle where there was a global order that was established after the Second World War. And at this point right now, this global order is buckling under a new weight of challenges and issues that global world leaders are not recognizing. Some of these challenges are technology. There's huge technological advancements that the new world order is not able to hold. And these technological advancements in mostly in the economic sector have brought up challenges that are really affecting our sense of humanity, like mechanization of the economy, where people are losing jobs because machines are doing the work that human beings are doing. So some of these issues, I think the world is gotta pay attention and not just still think in the sense of the order that existed after the Second World War. The world is gotta set up an order that is in the now and looking in the future, not in the past and looking in the future, because there's a huge gap. The other thing is the politics and the economics. Of course, the UN is one of those bodies that has been the police of the world in terms of political, economic, and social issues. But its work is more effective when countries, state members are cooperating, are committed, and they believe in what the UN is pushing. But with the existence of political interest and the economic interests of these states, it has made the work of the UN very difficult. And you can see this with the Security Council. It's really difficult to pass some issues, even if it's like the war in Syria. We can really see that people are devastated, people are dying. The war in Yemen, people are starving. But because countries have political interests or economic interests in this part of the world, they're not going to come to a decision. So I think the UN challenge is getting mixed up in the political and economic interests of states that it's working with. That's one of the major and huge challenges that I see that is going to make the world we want to see very difficult. You can see that it's already entangled into the COVID-19 politics between China and America. So this makes it hard to get to anything if such an institution is mixed up into the politics of interests. And it's one of those key issues that we gotta look out as young people. And because for us, our interests do not have any sophistications. if there is climate change, there is a drift in how we deal with this thing. We just gotta make a decision and stop some things, emission of gases, and it's such a simple thing. But with the existence of political interests and economic interests, which come first before making a decision, it makes everything hard. And as young people, our world is so simple. We just want to get things done. We just don't want the complication of things. So the politics of interest is really a huge hurdle in the world we want to see as young people.
Thank you, Daniel, for the in-depth reply. Thank you so much. That was indeed a very in-depth reply. I hope the people that are listening and paying attention to the thing that we all are saying. So same question from Tiana. What are the hurdles you think that we'll be facing in 2045 by achieving the vision that you just represented?
Thank you, Ali. So I mentioned the issues with the UN and the need for reform. And I think the main obstacles include a lack of motivation for such broad reform, entrenched bureaucracy, and also the sort of self-centered extreme nationalism that I mentioned before, that mindset of many leaders around the world. So the growing anti-multilateralism and anti-cooperation is really a threat to international organizations like the UN. There's leadership in countries like the US, where I am right now, who would rather simply get rid of the UN or completely withdraw from organizations like the WHO, and instead of reforming it, especially if said reform could lead to less control over the UN or reduced political influence. But I don't want to leave us there with those barriers, because I do believe that the solutions are there, and I believe that we're making progress. I think some of these solutions to these issues include social movement, including the youth and civil society. What we're doing right now, we put pressure on our governments to see that we're not happy with how things are. Things need to change. And I think that that really pushes us forward. I think we also need to move towards a better global system, global education system, that puts an emphasis, like my colleagues have said, on shared humanity. I think that's so important, is that youth, everyone from little coming up, we need to be teaching that we have a shared humanity instead of the more toxic extreme nationalism that I mentioned before. And I think technology and social media will allow us to continue to move there. Someone mentioned Black Lives Matter. We saw protests across the world. We saw them in Asia around Black Lives Matter. And that really shows how technology can really help us to really get over these barriers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiana. The same question from Dana. Hurdles, issues.
Ali, I think, to be honest, I will take a step back and speak on a more grassroots level, because a lot of you guys have addressed the UN and the global level, and I don't want to wear my UN hat today because I don't want to take the heat for it. But I think we are, as youth, either our biggest ally or our biggest hurdle. And allow me to kind of challenge or philosophize on that a little bit. When we address the UN as a separate entity to us, we are already giving that power that we have up and away. What we don't realize is us as youth, we play a very critical role within the UN system. We have interns, we have consultants, we have JPOs, we have P1s, P2s, P3s, starting fresh, but bringing those fresh ideas and challenging the system from within. And I think that is where our power can lie. And that is where, if we were to continue separating ourselves from the system that governs the global order of humanitarian aid, we will continue to fall back where we don't see results. I think, once again, I see all of the speakers on this panel doing amazing work if they were to have a mission for themselves to be integrated within the system and work from within. Tiana mentioned activism, advocacy, and creating movements. I think that is very powerful from a civil society perspective, but the work needs to be done from within as well. I don't believe in, extreme shifts. Change takes time. In order for you to see enriching change, you need to really invest yourself into the system to create that from within. So just to leave us on an encouraging note, and not to be so cliche, but truly try to become the change you want to see and start working from within the system. It's a tough job, but it's available to us all. And we can push for the change that we want to see from within the UN system itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana, and everyone. So we have a lot of questions building up from the people. They're watching us. They're sending a lot of questions. So these questions will be asked from you, as I will moderate these questions. But before that, my last question is specific on the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. What is that one advice you want to give to the Secretary General of the United Nations? I'm going to start with the Malaika, be very short and precise.
Well, I'll keep it in the theme of this panel and very short. Listen to the youth, I would say. We have more to offer than I think is realized.
Thank you, Malaika. The same question, any advice for the Secretary General of the United Nations, Catherine?
I think what I've been hearing a lot from others on this panel as well is that there has to be investment in structural reform and fundamental reform of the United Nations. And that's something that I think has been attempted in the past, but our generation is asking for very clear ways that the UN will operate differently in 25 years.
Thank you, Catherine. Daniel, same question. Any advice for the Secretary General of the United Nations?
I have two advices I would give, but first of all, I concur with Malaika. He should listen to the young people. He should make them his allies. He should empower us to work with him. We are more powerful than the world thinks we are. So if he wants a reliable and passionate ally beyond the politicians and the economists, we are here. Bring us in. Let's work with you. And the other thing is the UN's got to draw a clear line between politics of states and its agenda. I think that will be really very reliable and healthy.
Thank you, Daniel. Same question from you, Tiana.
I love what Daniel said. I think that really drives home at least what I was going to say. So I'm just going to reiterate it very shortly, but I agree that the UN needs to go back to its core principles and commitments, its core agenda, and not allow that to be corrupted by politics and by the independent agendas of each of its member states.
Thank you, Tiana. Same question for you, Dana.
So if I could give the UN Secretary General advice, it would be not to just hear the youth, but to also go a step further and create opportunities for the youth. It's not enough for you to hear youth because you can hear all you want, but where's the action? How are you actually implementing our recommendations? How are you actualizing our voices and our sentiments? Create opportunities for the youth. Include the youth, make sure that they have power over policy, they have a seat on the table with you, and that they are present on a larger scale than they are right now.
Thank you, Dana, and everyone. So now I'm gonna ask the questions that are coming from the Facebook. And my questions can be specific. If any one of you want to answer that question, just raise your hand in a video so I can give you the floor if it's not specifically targeted towards you. So I'm gonna include the question from Mehdi Siddiqui. He's asking, how will the current trajectory of the world political development reflect on micro societal factors of the future? Daniel, I think you can be the best person to answer this. Yes, Daniel, the question is from you. How the current trajectory of the world politics development reflect on the micro-societal factors of the future?
Obviously, politics has everything to do with how we live every single day. Politics decides how much taxes you're going to pay. Politics decides whether you're going to have health insurance or not. Politics decides whether you're going to get a viable, reliable education. So politics has a lot to decide on our daily living. But at the end of the day, there's some good things that politics can deliver to the people. You realize we just went through a wave of the Arab Spring, and these things have been led by young people because they're not trusting their leaders. They believe their leaders are not working for them. They believe politics can do better, economics can do better if there are good policies that provide social services to the people, like rule of law. These are things that are so human. Democracy and all these things, they are at the center of our sense of humanity, equality. I mean, every human being wants to be treated equal. Every human being wants to be treated with dignity. Every human being wants an opportunity. So these things are at the core of our sense of humanity. That's why in the beginning I said, if we go back to our sense of humanity, we can solve a lot of global issues in the most simpler way, because leadership that serves people makes communities and people thrive. And when people thrive, they create communities and countries that are equal, that are balanced, where people are happy. So what I want to put forward is that the United Nations, much as it has to stay away from the politics of states and focus more on its agenda, which is more human-centered, that's the aspect that would make the world a better place. If the UN comes out as the advocate for our sense of humanity, because that's what they are doing. Security and peace it's everything to do with that sense of humanity. Gender equality has everything to do with that sense of humanity. And if they can root in that and hold the politicians or the leaders from different countries accountable to these principles as an institution that is policing the rest of the world, I think that can make things easier for our sense of humanity and bridge the gap between the ordinary people and the states, because there's got to be some sense of trust. And the politicians have to understand, no matter how much you want to use this power for your own interest, at the end of the day, it's all about people. It's not going to be about politics and your ego and what you want to put forth. It's all about the people. And if you're going to serve your people very well, I mean, you're going to create a legacy and a society that would be a model for the rest of the world. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope I answered it very well.
Thank you, Daniel. So next question I'm gonna include is from Olivia Garcia. And it's open. If any one of you wants to answer, just raise your hand in the screen so I can give you the floor. It's from Olivia Garcia. She's asking, as we think about building back better after COVID-19 crisis, how can we make sure that institutions build back better for everyone, not just those who are at the top and in power? Who wants to answer this? All right, Dana, floor is yours.
I really like this question because it ties greatly into my line of work. And I'll give you an example as how COVID-19 has offered opportunities for vulnerable communities to step up, take the lead, and build better. COVID-19 has actually crippled a lot of humanitarian aid channels, especially for supply chain, and public service and public aid. We have all been forced to kind of confine ourselves in quarantine, not be in touch with one another. And in the example of refugee camps, this has meant that a lot of aid officers were not able to access the camps out of fear of causing more harm than good. What this has given is the opportunity for community-based organizations or local activists to finally step up into that role, which is actually theirs, in my personal opinion, and start providing for their communities by gaining that economic and financial donation support from the UN agencies. So what they have done is they have slowly shifted the paradigm that we're talking about, and they have, instead of calling for an international organization to continue providing that aid, they have said, we can provide that aid even better because we know what our community needs. We are from within the community, and we're here. You cannot access us, and this is our job, and we're stepping up to it. Once again, this is very inspiring because you think about how these communities actually do have the empowerment that they need, they have the power that they need, and all they needed to do was take that opportunity and step up. And it ties again into our conversation about the youth and what the youth can do, which is again to step up and take that narrative and lead the narrative that they want to have appear or happen or manifest. So building back better, it is us who has to do that. It is us who has to step up and say, this is how I think was wrong, because we have seen the error of our own ways in a sense, and this is how we think things should be, and actually push for that on a policy level, on a community level, amongst one another, on an academic level, on an advocacy level. It is our job, guys. It really is our job. Thank you. I hope that was a fruitful example to share.
Thank you so much. So I'm gonna include the last question, and if any one of you want to answer that, just raise your hand, and I'll give the floor to you. So the last question is, how can we, it's from Yumna Khan, and she's asking, how can we encourage others to feel the same sense of humanity so we can work together despite the differences? Daniel, floor is yours.
Well, you don't have to be told how to feel like a human being because you're already a human being. And when you look at yourself, there are things about you that really a sense that is not only defining you, but defines the person next to you. Like every human being wants to thrive. Every human being wants to be happy. Every human being wants a safe and secure future. So these things define our sense of humanity and our sense of being a human being. And they are accompanied by things like freedom. They are accompanied by things like equality. And I think our generation is really doing good. And the challenge we have here is that the generation before us is so soaked into this idea of social differences. Because I see young people here in America at Black Lives Matter, white, black, they're standing and they're demonstrating. They don't care if you're black or you're white. We're here, we're just having fun. We're just putting our voice out there. Yeah, you find like for them, color or race or which part of the world you come from, it doesn't really matter so much. What matters is we are here. We are putting our voice on the line. They're gonna hear us. They're gonna feel us. And when you realize there are politicians who have a perspective into this, like you can hear, like Bernie Sanders, he has spoken the language that young people want to hear, a language that unites people, a language that makes things work in a more simpler way and not in a more sophisticated way. And I don't want to dismiss that everything's going to be easy for us or our generation, but there are things really that we don't really need to complicate things like climate change. Why would you complicate such a thing when you can clearly, the evidence is there, it's very clear, but because of the politics of trade and countries, things get complicated. So what I want to say is that just like Dana said, every young people, wherever you are, it doesn't matter whether you've been to the best universities in the world, or you come from the richest family, or you've had the best education in the world. Every young people, wherever you are, in the poorest slums of Africa, or in the rural areas of Africa, or rural areas of South America or Asia, you have a voice on the table, and you gotta put your voice on the table and talk about these things, because that's when our collective voice will become louder and louder, and people will hear us, and people will realize that there is a sense of humanity out here that we gotta pay attention to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Malaika, you want to say something? And then...
Yeah, I quickly wanted to add that I think another thing that you can do to help acknowledge our shared humanity is challenging everything that you've been taught. I think that understanding that everything has biases, from your history books to, you know, how they teach you about your country, your government, and everything that you learn has a bias. It's been created by humans, and, you know, skin color, race, all of that is in a way a societal construct. And so the first thing that we can do to help acknowledge our shared humanity is to think about critically about everything that we learn, and think about whose perspective it's from, and think about how we got to that place. And I think in doing that, in challenging your beliefs and how you formed your beliefs, you can really understand that there is no differences, no fundamental differences between all of us. And that at the end of the day, our goals are all the same. I would just, yeah, I wanted to add that.
Thank you, Malaika. Yes, Diana, floor is yours.
I just quickly wanted to piggyback on what everyone else has said. I think there have been some great points made. I would say one of the biggest things in order to bring forth that idea of our shared humanity is to speak up when you see instances of people using that rhetoric that divides and creates divisions between people. I think a lot of times we see that. It happens in politics up above, and you might not be able to speak up to a president or a prime minister, but you can do it in your community. You can educate people, sharing your story and things like that. I would also like to just bring in a new perspective. I agree that a lot of the time when we say shared humanity, we often have a conversation about how we're all similar, we're all humans, and it unites us. But I do not think that in that way we should get rid of the things that are very special and unique about each one of us. I do not think that celebrating the differences in culture, the differences in color, the differences in cultures, in languages, is something that we should get rid of. I don't think that we should not see me and see a brown person, or not see me and see a Jamaican because it means that I'm different in some way from you. I celebrate those differences, and I think those differences are what also kind of brings us together. Yes, our shared humanity is very important. We're all more similar than we are different, but those differences are very important too. They shouldn't divide us, but they also should not be dismissed or gotten rid of, I don't think. So I just wanted to bring in that idea, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. As we move towards the conclusion of this panel. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Malaika. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Dana. And thank you, Tiana, for joining us for this conversation and contributing towards the advices that the UN 75 office is collecting on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And I'm sure whatever you have said, whatever you have advised to the Secretary General of the United Nations and the system of the UN will not go in vain, and it's most definitely will be accounted. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you everyone for watching. So as we move towards the conclusion, would like to request all of the speakers to kindly exit the call so I can invite Dr. Andrew McDonald, the Executive Director of the Friendship Ambassador Foundation, for the concluding remarks. Thank you, everyone. The panel.
Thank you, everyone. That was absolutely wonderful. I dream of the world that you are going to create, and I know it's going to be a wonderful place to live. Well, thank you, everyone, for partaking today in this chat session. And, you know, when we envisioned this, we wanted to accomplish, we basically had 4 objectives, one of which was to honor friendship and International Day of Friendship. And there are a number of designated international days of throughout the year by the UN. And this one is one that is not really well known, but in my mind, should be one of the best and most well known. Let me just read to you very quickly from the website on International Day of Friendship. Through friendship, by accumulating bonds of camaraderie and developing strong ties of trust, we can contribute to the fundamental shifts that are urgently needed to achieve lasting stability, weave a safety net that will protect us all, and generate passion for a better world where all are united for the greater good. Those are absolutely beautiful words. And imagine a world where we had that. The other objective that we tried to achieve was to honor the UN and its 75th anniversary and UN 75 and the work that they were doing with these dialogues. We wanted to partake in the conversation and help tackle the challenges that we all face. And so by partaking today, you are part of the world's biggest conversation about the future. The third thing we wanted to achieve was to showcase an organization that really embraces and exemplifies cooperation, friendship, and interdependence. When I met Jamie Metzel and his team about a month and a half ago, I ended the conversation and said, we have to do something together. We've got to help get that word out about what you're doing. So I hope you listened in and really partake, get on their website. They are doing some tremendous work out there. And then the fourth was, as always one of our primary objectives is to give youth a voice. This is the future that youth want and that youth need. And you can create a better world by partaking in these. So I thank you all for partaking in this, but it does not stop there. There are many opportunities around the world for you to continue on and partake with other change makers and leaders, young leaders. Our youth assembly, our 26 youth assemblies occurring in just a few days. Registrations are still open. Feel free to partake. We would love to have you. If you like to partake and work within this environment with, as I said, other change makers and young leaders, then please, you will really enjoy being part of that. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. I wish you all a wonderful Friendship Day. Thank you for all the speakers, Jamie Metzel, One Shared World, and for the youth out there. We can create a better world, and it can start with and must start with young people. Thanks again. And thank you, Ali.
Thank you so much, Andrew. With that, we move towards the conclusion of our second program for the Decade of Youth Action. First event and the program was the launching of the Decade of Youth Action on the March 4th at the headquarters of the United Nations. This is the second program of our Decade of Youth Action campaign. Soon you're gonna hear about more program. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on the Instagram, follow us on Facebook. As Andrew mentioned, we got our larger than life youth assembly. The youth assembly coming up next month in a few days, starting August 8 to 9. So yes, you still have time to sign up for that. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining this conversation. We hope to see you all at the 26th Virtual Youth Assembly. Thank you so much and goodbye.